Namaskar. On behalf of India Foundation, I, Dr. Pawan Chaurasia, welcome you all for a book discussion. Today, we have a book discussion on the book Unforgettable Chapters, Memoirs of a Top Cop by Shri Prakash Singh ji, former DGP Uttar Pradesh and Assam and former DG BSF. This event has been organized by India Foundation in collaboration with India Habitat Center. To discuss this book with the author, we have a set of eminent panelists with us, whom I would like to request to come to the dais. May I request Shri Nitin Gokhale ji, who is National Security Analyst and Editor-in-Chief of StratNewsGlobal.com. May I request Ms. Prabha Rao, former IPS and Executive Director, South Asian Institute for Strategic Affairs. Shri Abhinav Kumar, ADG, Prisons and Correctional Services Department, Government of Uttarakhand, and Captain Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation, to kindly come to the dais. And may I also request Shri Prakash Singh ji, the author of the book, to kindly come to the dais, sir. I would request Captain Alok Bansal, Director of India Foundation, to kindly carry forward the proceedings.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this month's book discussion. Police in India has a very low approval rating. If you actually were to do a survey, they would give you the different organs of the state, and if you were to take an approval rating, you'll invariably find police ranks rather low. So, amongst the policemen, there have been some icons, and I think an iconic figure is Shri Prakash Singh ji, who not only advocated police reforms, but took on the political and bureaucratic establishment head-on many occasions. In fact, police reforms is a crying need, and I think nobody would disagree. I remember a few years back, BPRND used to invite me for their annual conference with Home Minister, which they used to have. And one year, they asked me to speak. So I said, from 47 to this date, you have created SSP, DG, ADG, AIG, which have no functional requirement but for cadre review, which is nothing wrong. This is perfectly okay. Cadre review requires certain new ranks. IAS have also created additional secretary, special secretary, cabinet secretary, principal secretary. But at the lower strata, it has always remember constable, head constable, SI and inspector. Don't they need cadre review? Of course, after that, they stopped calling me for any more conferences thereafter. But as I said, police reforms is a crying need. And that's where I think Prakash Singh ji's this book, Unforgettable Chapters, is phenomenal. It's certain really interesting anecdotes, and of course certain statements which could stir a lot of interest, like one statement which says, bureaucrats then had more spine. So, without wasting much time, I'll request Prakash Singh ji to first delve on the book, 10 to 15 minutes, speak about the book, whatever he wishes to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bansal, for having introduced me, and Mr. Gokhale, Prabha Rao, Abhinav, distinguished ladies and gentlemen here. First of all, I would like to thank the India Foundation and the Habitat Center for having organized this function about a discussion on my book. This book was actually released last year in the month of September in the India International Center by Justice Madan Lokur. Subsequently, we had a book discussion in Nehru Center, Mumbai, and a small function also in Guwahati, where it was headed by the governor of Assam. Actually, this function came as a bit of a surprise to me, because first I got a call from the Habitat Center that they would like to organize a book discussion. I said, thank you very much. My first question was, what would be the financial liability on me, because all these functions involve a lot of expenditure. He said, no, sir, it will be entirely on the Habitat Center. I said, thank you very much, then you can go ahead. But while I had given my okay to the Habitat Center, then came Captain Bansal's phone. Okay, sir, we want to organize a book discussion in Habitat Center, Gulmohar Hall. मैंने कहा भाई गुलमोहर हॉल हैबिटाट सेंटर में एक डिस्कशन तो हो गया, अब 2 डिस्कशन तो 1 महीने में नहीं हो पाएगा. He said, no, sir, we'll tell the Habitat Center to drop out and we'll take this discussion forward. I said, well, it's between the two of you. I mean, for me, a book discussion is fine. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, whether you are sponsoring it or Habitat Center is sponsoring it, it's all the same for me. A few words about the book. I mean, what motivated me to write the book. And mind you, I wrote the book nearly 30 years after my retirement. Not that, I mean, there were suggestions soon after my retirement also that, sir, you should write your autobiography, this, that. But I was disinclined. I said, I hate to write an autobiography because I don't like the idea of writing that I did this and I did that, and which normally autobiographies have. So, I mean, I resisted the temptation, but then as the years rolled by, and 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and then when the suggestions that I should be writing something on my career and continued to pour in, and in between came some strange remarks which surprised me. He said, sir, you have contributed more post-retirement than while in service. So, I mean, this frankly put me off because I thought post-retirement I had done only, I mean, you can say writing and going to Supreme Court, going to this forum, going to High Court, going to Press Council, I mean, taking up various issues. It was just writing and moving in the safety of Delhi. Of course, that also was a strain, but nevertheless, it was nothing compared to what I had gone through in service. I mean, nothing compared to that, because in service, I mean, I don't know why I got posted to one turbulent area after another, and it was hazardous to be working in Nagaland, it was hazardous to be working in Punjab, it was hazardous to be working in Kashmir, but I went through all that, and it meant tremendous strain on your mind, tremendous strain on your body, and very traumatic experience in between, and apart from that, there were threats to my life. There were, in Nagaland, in fact, they issued a proper ahza. Ahza means a formal order for my assassination. In Punjab, I was told that your sons would be kidnapped and there'll be a mortar attack on your residence, all that. So I've gone through all that in my in life, and I felt that was much tougher than what I have done post-retirement. But anyway, this remark came from more than one quarter, and all that set me thinking that I think I must write down all this with no frills and a bare factual account without trying to brag or take credit for this or that, and certainly not to settle any accounts. Because some people write disparagingly about people whom they could not get along with well. So you would have noticed that those who have read the book would notice that wherever I have paid tributes to an officer, I have mentioned his name. Wherever I have said I had problems with this officer, I have mentioned his designation, which most of you would find difficult to decipher unless you go do some kind of research कि इस साल में ये इस जगह पे ये कौन अफसर इनका बॉस था. So that would be tough. So there was no intention of settling any scores with my bosses. And mind you, I had trouble all along my career. With politicians, with senior officers, because I was very clear that there are certain principles which I uphold, and there is no question of compromising on those. If somebody one day asked me to quit the service, I'd prefer to quit the service than compromise on those principles. I was very clear on that. So, I mean, and this reputation I acquired in 1978 in Meerut. That was the starting point of this reputation, where I was serving as DIG, and I was handpicked by the Home Minister of India, Chaudhry Charan Singh, for this assignment. Because once he took over as Home Minister of India, the serving DIG of Meerut quickly left on deputation, and the post was vacant for 1 month. And the UP government did not have the courage to post any officer without consulting Chaudhry Sahab. And UP government had his protege as Chief Minister Ram Naresh Yadav, a briefless lawyer from Azamgarh. So the post was lying vacant for 1 month. Ultimately, Mr. Jain Chaturvedi was one of his confidants, and he asked for Chaturvedi, वहाँ merit में किसको post करें, इस तरह, something like that transpired. And this is what Mr. Chaturvedi told me. तो Mr. Chaturvedi, as he told me, he said, sir, अगर आप पुलिस को एक नई छवि देना चाहते हैं तो प्रकाश सिंह को भेज दीजिए वहाँ, ऐसे वो जूनियर है पर उसको भेज दीजिए. So that's how we got posted. And with Chaudhry Charan Singh there, I thought he's a hawk-eyed man from Meerut supervising, I'm from Delhi supervising whatever is happening in Meerut area. I thought I should be extra careful, and then I embarked on what was almost a crusade against corruption. And in that crusade against corruption, I left, right and center. Wherever I found things wrong, I just punished the officers, little realizing the background of the officers and not being bothered about it. In fact, that was not part of my thinking, not part of my, you can say my way of life, कि किसी की जात देखकर तो कोई काम किया जाए. So wherever I found anything wrong, I kept on punishing officers left, right and center. And but it so happened that during those days, with Chaudhry Charan Singh at Delhi, they had managed, all the Jat officers from different parts of UP had managed their posting in Meerut. अब जिस पे हाथ डालो वो कोई ना कोई वही एक ही कास्ट का पड़ जाए. अच्छा, they were all Singhs. I didn't care to find out whether it is Kshatriya or Jat or Gujar or whatever it is. But it so happened that a whole lot of Jats got suspended. And then they went to a delegation to चौधरी साहब कि साहब ये आपने क्या, हम लोगों ने सोचा था कि अब नौकरी करने का टाइम आया है. नौकरी करने का टाइम आया मतलब नौकरी भी करेंगे, पैसा भी बनाएंगे. तो अब ऐसा समय आया और ये आपने कैसा डीआईजी भेज दिया जो सारा खाना पीना बंद कर रहा है और वो पनिश अलग कर रहा है. तो खैर ये तो नहीं कहा खाना पीना, उनका पनिश कर रहा है. सो एंड चौधरी साहब इज अ मैन ऑफ स्टर्लिंग क्वालिटीज़, बट प्रॉब्लम वॉज थोड़ा कान के कच्चे थे. उनके दिमाग में ये भर गया कि ये तो एंटी जाट अफसर है. सो suddenly I get a call from Vijay Karan, who OSD to the Home Minister of India, कि प्रकाश क्या हो गया भाई, तुमको बुला रहे हैं चौधरी साहब, वो बड़े गुस्से में हैं. तो I was in Muzaffarnagar. I drove straight from Muzaffarnagar to North Block, appeared before him in full uniform, and I found him burning with rage. He started bombarding me with allegations, इसको आपने punish किया, इसको punish किया. But I stood my ground, very politely but very firmly. नहीं सर, ये इसके खिलाफ ये आरोप थे, इसके खिलाफ ये आरोप थे, ये बेईमान है, ये यहाँ पैसे बना रहा था, ये यहाँ इसने दुराचार किया वगैरह वगैरह. But he would not listen. He would not listen. And at one stage then there was a pause and I said, मैंने कहा सर अब मुझे कुछ और नहीं कहना है सर, मैं जा रहा हूँ. I saluted and walked out of the room. And before I could reach Meerut, my transfer orders had come. No, if it was a transfer order, it's okay. I mean, transfer is part of the game. One doesn't mind. But it was followed by an order for my suspension. But those days, as rightly quoted, the bureaucrats had some spine. The Chief Secretary, the Home Secretary both knew me, and they knew that Prakash Singh is a straightforward officer. He would not do anything wrong. The Chief Minister called them कि भाई प्रकाश सिंह को सस्पेंड करिए. तो उन्होंने कहा सर पैसे तो सस्पेंशन नहीं होता, उसके खिलाफ कुछ आरोप होना चाहिए. तो उन्होंने कागज़ से एक पर्ची निकाल दी जो उनको शायद दिल्ली से भेजी गई थी. उन्होंने पर्ची दे दिया. तो पर्ची को उन्होंने पढ़ा एंड दे कुड सी दैट यूजुअल काइंड ऑफ फ्रिवोलस एलिगेशन, बट दे वर वेरी क्लेवर, आई मस्ट से. दे सेड सर इसकी हम जांच करा देंगे, उसके बाद प्रकाश सिंह को सस्पेंड करेंगे. तो अब रामलेश ने कहा हमको तो भाई कंप्लाइंस देना है कि सस्पेंड हो गए. कहने सर जांच एकदम जल्दी से करा देंगे. उनका अच्छा 1 हफ्ते में हो जानी चाहिए. उनका ठीक है 1 हफ्ते में हो गई. तो देन द एंटी करप्शन इंक्वायरी वाज इंस्टीट्यूटेड अगेंस्ट मी एंड दे कुड फाइंड नथिंग. दे सेड इट्स ऑल bunkum. It's absolutely they gave me a complete clean slate. Now this is what happened really, but I don't know how things get distorted. And in UP all kinds of stories started floating कि होम मिनिस्टर ने ये कहा, प्रकाश सिंह ने ये कहा. ऐसा कुछ नहीं हुआ था. मैं तो बड़े एक विनम्रता से और बड़े पोलाइट सब बोलता रहा, पर बड़ी सारी कहानियाँ बन गई इसकी. और ये हुआ कि प्रकाश सिंह तो होम मिनिस्टर से भी नहीं दबे. So that was the starting point of my reputation, that he can take a stand against politicians. But this was only the beginning. Subsequently, in UP, I had problem on a number of issues. which I think it's not necessary to go into details. Those are mentioned in the book. The whole combination of factors combined. And the factors so combined that today the Chief Minister, while addressing a public meeting in Hazrat Mahal Park, he says that our greatest achievement is दंगा रहित भय मुक्त समाज और दंगा रहित प्रदेश हमने स्थापित कर दिया उत्तर प्रदेश में. बड़ा अच्छा आपने ये स्थापित कर दिया. किसके बूते पे स्थापित किया है? डीजीपी के बूते पे, पुलिस के बूते पे. और उसके 2 दिन बाद मुझे कहते हैं कि ही कॉल्स मी एंड गिव्स मी मार्चिंग ऑर्डर्स दैट यू आर रिलीव्ड ऑफ योर चार्ज. I was very upset. I was very upset because I had worked really hard to improve things in UP, and things had changed. And as I have mentioned in the book, a lead article in a national daily, its caption was Uttar Pradesh mein Prakash ki Kiran. I think that summed up my tenure in UP. And on the one hand, this is what is being said in public. On the one hand, this is what the Chief Minister is boasting कि दंगा रहित प्रदेश और भय मुक्त समाज मैंने स्थापित कर दिया, और दूसरी तरफ मुझे कह रहे हैं कि you get out. And not only get out, I mean, very unceremoniously. I mean, about 11:30 I'm told to hand over charge, and I said, sir, मैं बहुत अनुग्रहित हूँ कि आपने मुझे प्रदेश में काम करने का मौका दिया, परंतु अब इन परिस्थितियों में मैं अब भविष्य में नौकरी नहीं करूँगा. मैं छुट्टी की दरख्वास्त दे दूँगा और उसके बाद आपको मैं अपना इस्तीफ़ा भेज दूँगा इन ड्यू कोर्स ऑफ टाइम. तो उन्होंने समझा कि दरोगा की तरह कहीं भाग जाएगा और कहीं अस्पताल में दाखिल हो जाएगा जैसे दरोगा लोग होते हैं, टू अवॉइड हैंडिंग ओवर चार्ज. मैंने कहा साहब आप निश्चिंत रहिए, मैं 1 बजे तक चार्ज हैंड ओवर कर दूँगा. इट वॉज अ वेरी humiliating transfer, and as India Today remarked, it was the ultimate in humiliation, and the humiliation was not of Prakash Singh but of the Indian Police Service. So I handed over charge. So that was another major setback. In Assam also, I was sent on a special mandate. I don't belong to Assam cadre, but I was sent on a special mission that because Ulfa were threatening that they will not allow elections to be held, and the government of India was very nervous. Mr. M.K. Narayanan was the DIB at that time, and they wanted that elections have to be held, and we need a strong DGP who can ensure that Ulfa are kept in check. I was at that time in Punjab. So, but suddenly I get a call from the Prime Minister's office that you are wanted. अब मैं समझ गया कि Prime Minister के दफ्तर से मुझे क्यों बुलाहट आई, मैं थोड़ा घबराया. खैर, as I walked in, the Prime Minister was there, the Home Secretary was there, and the Minister of State for Home was there, and a couple of other officers. And I was told that we have decided to send you to Assam. So I felt elated, and I also felt surprised. I said, sir, thank you very much for considering me for this honor, but I don't belong to Assam cadre, and I'll have problem in getting the loyalty of my officers. No, we have thought of all those considerations, and you have done enough of anti-terrorism in Punjab, you better go there. I said, okay, if that's an order, I'll comply with it. So that's how I went to Assam, but in Assam, it was mission accomplished for me because elections were held, Ulfa was kept in check. But subsequently, soon after completing that, I wanted to leave the state. But Mr. K.N. Prasad, who was in the IB and who was my mentor, he said, नहीं प्रकाश, तुमने बड़ा अच्छा यहाँ काम किया है, तुम थोड़ा 1-2 महीने और रह जाओ, जरा आसाम पुलिस को जरा ठिकाने लगा दो, जरा रास्ते पे आ जाए. मैंने कहा सर अब ये तो बड़ा मुश्किल है, अब चलिए आप उनके अपने गुरु की बात टाली भी नहीं जा सकती थी. मैंने कहा ओके सर, आई विल स्टे हियर फॉर अ फ्यू मंथ्स. बट द पॉपुलर चीफ मिनिस्टर फाउंड मी वेरी इनकन्वीनियंट पर्सन, एंड we just couldn't get along well, and he created a situation where I sent him a letter that I'm sorry, under these circumstances, I'm not prepared to serve as DGP Assam, and I may be allowed to hand over charge. Because I believe that if I am DGP, I must assert my authority. And I'm not prepared to be a showpiece or a decorative piece placed on a throne. But you carry out the Chief Minister's order and that's all. No, I have to assert my authority. I have to rule as per the law books. So I said, no, I'm not prepared to work under these circumstances. Then I left Assam. And when I left Assam, of course, I had nowhere to go. I had just nowhere to go. The Home Secretary wanted to help me, and he wanted that you come back to IB. IB would not take me कि ये आ जाएगा तो कहीं अगला DIB न बन जाए, तो So the officers, senior most officers said, "नहीं भैया इसको नहीं आने देंगे." Then I went to the BSF where I had served and served with distinction. The DG BSF, I won't mention his name, he said, "If you have to come to BSF, you might as well take over from me." मैंने कहा, "Sir, what are you saying?" I had gone there, I would have served him with loyalty as his number two, but he thought once Prakash Singh comes, he'll be more popular than me, and all the loyalties would gravitate to Prakash Singh, and he would of course take over as next DG. So isko dur rakho, you might as well take over from me. So I went to Mr. Godbole, one of the finest IAS officers that I have served with. He said, "Bhai, koi nahi le raha hai tumko, kya kiya jaye?" So, but then, by God's grace, we were sitting in Assam rest house, not knowing what to do, where to go. Then suddenly a call comes, and those days there was no mobile. So सिपाही दौड़ा हुआ है कि सर आपका फ़ोन आया है. तो मैं दौड़ के गया, वो जो मेस के फ़ोन सुनने, तो उन दिनों तो लैंडलाइन थी. तो मैं कल्याण सिंह बोल रहा हूँ, उत्तर प्रदेश का मुख्यमंत्री. He said, "We have decided to offer you the post of DGP UP." अब अंधा क्या चाहे दो आंखें, मैं तो बिना नौकरी के था. मैंने कहा, "Thank you very much, sir," and that's how I got posted to UP. So, but suffice it to say that these were the three major setbacks with major politicians, and with officers I had a running battle. The Home Secretary, again not to mention his name, he didn't like my face. He didn't like my style of working because I was always taking a stand, and he was some kind of a bully, I'm sorry to say. So for the first time in the history of the BSF, the posting of my successor was announced 1 month before I was due to retire. As it is, I had a short tenure, 7 months only. Because those days we would retire at 58, and I had served as in Assam as DG and UP, so time was just running out. I had just 7 months left. उसमें भी उन्होंने 6 महीने में कह दिया कि अब ये आपका successor होगा, meaning thereby that all the loyalties can go to him. So I had a problem with bureaucrats, I had a problem with officers, but all told, I think as it is my conviction that if you follow the right path, and if you are committed to enforcing the rule of law and doing what is right and what is just, my experience is, not many would probably agree, or my experience is that some invisible divine forces help you, and it is this help which enabled me carry on and reach the highest positions as DG UP, DG Assam and DG BSF, and then at the end of it have a satisfactory ending. So these things were there, and then apart from that, post-retirement, I'm not the sort who can just sit idle. 31st of January I retired. I said, for 1st February, Prakash Singh, you can rest. On 2nd February, I started writing my book on the Naxalite movement, a book which was there in my brain for the last 25 years, but I could not write because I knew that if I write today, they won't let it be published. So I knew I can write this only after my retirement. So that's how the first book, post-retirement, was my book on the Naxalite movement. And then, of course, police reforms and other issues, they were all there. They are mentioned in the book. Post-retirement period has probably, I have tried to contribute to society in my own humble way. Just, as I said, just because I can't sit idle. And so I think I must give back to the society, to the country, whatever I can. And that is what has kept me going so far. And so I thought these things are summarized. My period as a police officer, very brief mention of the major landmarks in my career, and my period post-retirement, which is now 30 years. So I hope you find this book interesting, and I am prepared for grilling by Nitin Gokhale and his team, and whatever questions may be there from your side. Thank you very much, Mr. Bansal, once again, for having organized this.
Thank you, sir. There is no doubt anybody who has gone through the book would realize the enormous service to the nation that you have done in various appointments, stretching from Jammu and Kashmir to Nagaland to Punjab to Uttar Pradesh and different parts. And when people feel that you've done more after retirement, that's because of the jobs that you performed after retirement have been more high profile, or I would say rather media glaring. Chandra Babu Naidu's blast investigation, or police reforms, public interest litigations. These are the things which have actually drawn popular attention to a greater extent. We now have a very important discussant, Mr. Nitin Gokhale, and I think anybody who understands security knows Nitin Gokhale. His name is today synonymous with security as far as India is concerned, and he runs bharatshakti.com and is of course a well-known journalist of repute.
Mr. Prakash Singh, Alok, Prabha, Abhinav, my co-discussants, ladies and gentlemen, I consider this a singular honor to discuss Mr. Prakash Singh's book, because I don't know how many of you know, perhaps not many, that when he had that episode in Assam, I was about 8-9 years in the profession. I had started in 83 in Assam, stayed in Assam for 23 years between 1983 and 2006 as a reporter looking after the Northeast. And I distinctly remember the showdown that he had with Mr. Saikia, Hiteshwar Saikia, the Chief Minister that time. And in fact, the day after the new government of Hiteshwar Saikia was sworn in 1991, there were kidnapping of 14 people in Assam by the ULFA to force the government into submission almost and surrender, and which he did not agree to what the Chief Minister was saying, and he absolutely caught the essence of what the Saikia government was and what Mr. Saikia was. He would be very sweet to you in one-on-one interactions, in person, do things according to, I mean, seemingly do things according to what you thought your advice has been taken, and then go back and undermine you completely. And that was a time in Assam when the ULFA was running a parallel government almost throughout the state, at least in the rural areas. Having lived through it, having seen how other police officers, in fact, in 1996, 5 years after Mr. Prakash Singh honorably said that he would leave and not follow what the Chief Minister wanted, in 1996, the then DGP, the Home Secretary, and one more officer actually fled Assam. Many of you old-timers will remember, because the ULFA was running the state almost as if it was their fiefdom. And to take a stand in that context and in that circumstances is something that has stayed with me. I was a young reporter that time, and therefore have always looked up on him as someone who you can emulate in many things that you can follow as a principle in life, in many walks of life, different walks of life. His wide-ranging experience has been caught in the book, has been aptly described by him. Nagaland, again, another area of interest for me, and his encounter, near-death encounter at Josoma, where he had this thing with the underground that time. We call them insurgents, we call them militants, but eventually they all had their own axe to grind as far as these insurgencies are concerned. And having traveled to those areas which he has mentioned, the Josoma encounter, which he talks about in 1966, was something that I could really visualize, because even in the 90s or late 80s and the 90s up to about 2000s, when I used to travel in that area, they were backward, they were dangerous areas. And I can testify, sir, that what you went through in those years, they had just come back. I mean, they were trying to go to China, the gangs, as they were called, Muiwa and company. And I know from personal experience, because I also got kidnapped once in Mon by the NSCS. For 2 days they kept me. But I must say one thing, that the Naga insurgency of your times was at least principled. I don't know whether the same thing can be said about the insurgency now and even later. So that is something which fascinated me really when I went through the book. But more than anything else, I think your wide-ranging experience in Assam, Nagaland, Punjab, and the Naxal areas, which were primary theatres of insurgency and uprising, is something that I think most people, most students of national security must look at and study. Your book on Naxalism, for instance, is a handbook to understand what went through in the country, and your encounter with Charu Muzumdar that you have mentioned. And the fact that you mentioned that people know you more about your post-retirement work is the problem of not just Generation Z, as they call it, or Generation Z, but also the millennials who only look at history probably post-1990s. They don't know what happened in the 60s and the 50s. So therefore, you've done a yeoman's service, I would think, of giving the entire background of various security problems. And of course, the 3 mantras that you give are very useful. Please do, for the younger generation, please do go through the book and the 3 mantras that he mentions, especially for government officials. I won't reveal the mantras, otherwise you will not read the book. But he was successful, he is revered, he is an icon, basically because he didn't look for post-retirement sinecures. I think that's the bane of most government officials who are thinking of what next post-retirement. And I think that is something to be emulated. You also, it's a testimony to your, uprightness, that both sides of the political divide actually, you had a run-in with both sides of the political divide. The Congress in Assam, the BJP in Uttar Pradesh, and of course, various other run-ins you had with the officials. The interesting thing for me was your interview to India Today as a chief of BSF. And I think there is a revived interest in what happened in the 90s in Kashmir, or even in the 2000s. There's a movie called Ground Zero, which has come, the NND Dubey's story has been captured in that movie, Ghazi Baba. But the way you said it, and actually that's something that I want to just mention, what you said in that interview, that there have been mistakes, but don't run us down. But for the BSF, the tricolour would not be flying in Srinagar, which is, I think, the biggest achievement of the BSF at that point in time, and what you actually asserted to the media at that point in time. Because it is easy in the media to take sides of the insurgents and the undergrounds and say, okay, you made human rights, I mean, there have been human rights violations and otherwise. But when you look at what happened at that point in time, when you had no precedents, the police were more or less absent in Jammu and Kashmir. That time BSF went into the heart of Srinagar and actually established the writ of the Indian state, whatever it was worth. And I think that is something that we must give him credit for, and a round of applause actually for what he did at that one time. So, I won't take much time. There are 2 other discussants for this book. But again, I feel very privileged to have worked under his leadership, not worked really, being part of the Indian Police Foundation, of which he was the founding chairman. And for the last nearly 7-8 years, I've been seeing his wisdom and advice to the Indian Police Foundation, which tries to work for the police reforms. And police reforms have been talked about. It is synonymous with Mr. Prakash Singh, and we really cannot thank him enough for what he has been single-handedly fighting, going right up to the Supreme Court, getting the verdict, and of course trying to get it implemented is something that we should all be grateful about. He is one of the living legends of the national security apparatus in India. Thank you very much, sir, for your service.
Thank you, Nitin. I think you brought out rightly that Mr. Prakash Singh took immense risk, especially in his stints in Northeast. In fact, one of that which actually one is very noteworthy is when as a young officer he went undercover to an NSCN camp in Lefori. I think I won't delve into the details, but that was as close to death as one could be, actually taking a risk of that sort. I think today probably somebody would reprimand somebody for doing that, but it was, I think, a different era. I'll now request, since we were talking about intelligence when he was in IB, we have Ms. Prabha Rao as the next discussant. She has been in the Cabinet Secretariat. She is from Karnataka Police Cadre, and above all, she is a part of India Foundation.
Thank you, India Foundation. and India Habitat Center for this privilege for being a discussant on Mr. Prakash Singh's book. I must disagree a little bit with Mr. Gokhale. Of course, first of all, I disagree with Mr. Bansal to say that the police have very low rating. I think
That's a fact.
this is one thing that we have to remedy. It is not something that can be universally said that the police, that is only in Hindi movies that police have such low rating. Actually, like for instance, during the COVID times, it was the police who did most of the heavy lifting. And this is an aside, but this is just to bring out the importance of the police. Now, I also need to disagree a little bit with Mr. Gokhale. He said he doesn't want to give the mantras because people would not read the book. But I feel that I would like to give the mantras. Why I would like to give the mantras is it would tell people on how important Mr. Prakash Singh's work is and what kind of a crusader he has been, not just for police reforms, but as an evangelical, he has an evangelical emphasis on non-partisan police professionalism, which is something that is very, very much needed. Now, I'd like to just say, go right to the back of the book and talk about the mantras. When I start the discussion backwards this time, and say that he said 3 mantras. He said, first, keep your resignation letter in your pocket. Second, he said, this was really very nice, a dead lion is better than a living dog. And the third, he said, sar pe kafan, jeb mein istifa. Now, I feel that for current officers, for the younger officers, not just in the police, but in all public services, and for serving officers, I think this would be very useful mantras to have. Because we are at a time where there is a lot of partisanship, not just in the police, but in all services. And this kind of mantras would lead to a very much more proactive, very much more pro-public service, which is something that Mr. Prakash Singh sir has exemplified. Now, right from the back of the book, when I speak about the mantras, I will go to the forward and say that, you see, obviously his mantras have been successful as far as he's concerned. If you look at the kind of statements that he has got from a whole host of people, whether it is Rustamji or Ribeiro or Mr. Doval or the Prime Minister, who has said that Prakash Singh ji brings Prakash everywhere. So these are the kind of statements, so I feel in some way the mantras have worked. His memoirs have so many very interesting chapters, many of which have been touched on by Mr. Gokhale. But I would just talk about the blueprint that he has brought out for fighting insurgency in the Terai and in the Mand region. That would work even now. And for that, I think it is very useful for young officers to read that, especially young officers and both in intelligence and in security operations in insurgent areas. It would be very useful to read what he has to say. It's a copybook kind of a thing. Now, he has also spoken about public outreach with the Sikhs. He has spoken about the Nanak Mata Gurdwara where he had gone and the kind of interactions he had. Now, this is a copybook formula for the WAM policy. I mean, when I say WAM, you all know it is winning over hearts and minds. So the WAM policy is something that he has been advocating, which I think even today, even now, we really need to follow that copybook, which would, I feel it would yield more results than many other initiatives, including the more draconian ones that we are taking. And we were all very interested, I was very interested in reading about his experiences in Nagaland, especially in Jotsoswa, where, he said that for the first time, they got evidence on how the Chinese were funding the Naga insurgents. Now, this is there's the entire write-up on that, which I feel all of us should read. Now, this is of great relevance today because I think about 2-3 weeks ago, Aikato Chizusu, who was the son of one of the founders of the NSC and IM, Isaksu's son, has gone and joined the Eastern Front in Myanmar, which is fully funded by the Chinese. Now, this is something that is going to have a lot of repercussions on our Northeast and the developments thereon. And a lot of what Prakash Singh ji has spoken about in his book continues to have an immediate relevance to what is happening today in India in the Northeast. He has spoken, of course, about his 10 years in UP, and which have been fully covered by Mr. Gokhale, so I will not repeat it, but he has spoken on how he has been able to manage political tensions and maintain his dignity as an officer, which is something that I think at some stage all of us as officers face up, especially those of us in uniformed services, which we do tend to face a lot more than others because it is the cutting edge. Again, I don't need to talk about all the counter-mafia problems which are of relevance even today because it has already been touched upon. But I must say that we have all been so impressed by what he was writing about his interactions with the Naxals. I mean, even more than this book. Of course, this book is very good, but the book he has written about Naxals, that is a kind of a blueprint and a copybook which we have all been following. And thank you for that. And he has come out with this very interesting aspect in this book on development issues and has tied that up with the inequality report. And he has said that, you see, we need to, if we do not redress inequality issues in India, these problems are going to persist because 1% of people in India hold 22% of the wealth, and this kind of inequality is going to lead to social tensions, which would perhaps only burgeon in the future. And this is a matter that, again, I need to compliment him on how well he has put it into his book. And of course, we have all been following his post-retirement work in the writ petitions. The writ petition on Manipur was very, very good. That was one thing that we read through, and the import of that we are seeing today. And of course, the National Police Commission, which so many police officers have benefited from because it has ensured that they have 2 years of tenure as DGs, as IGs of certain ranges. This has actually brought in a lot of stability into the police force. Otherwise, there used to be a time where DGs would be transferred within 5 months, 4 months, 6 months, and that would actually lead to a lot of instability within the service. So I feel that a lot of what Prakash Singh ji has written, both in his writ petitions, in his previous books, and in this book, it needs to be made compulsory reading for public services, not just for the police, but for all public services. And only say thank you, sir, for this very illuminating memoir. It has been a pleasure to read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabha. One clarification. When I said that police is held in low esteem, it was not my value judgment. I said various surveys that have been conducted where they have asked for approval rating of various institutions. Invariably, police force ranks amongst the lowest. Now, that's a perception. Now, it's far from reality. You have to ensure. And to ensure that, I think we have the final discussant who is a serving police officer, Abhinav Kumar, ADG Police Uttarakhand, former DGP, and he has also served in BSF. So, and he has been an articulate intellectual. I think despite being a policeman, he has been writing consistently on newspapers, etc. Sometimes,
well, not always to my conducive to my well-being, but it's an occupational hazard. Respected Prakash Singh sir, all the distinguished speakers on the dais, Ram Madhav sir, Madam Bhaswati, all my senior stalwarts from the Indian Police Service, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, just going on about the initial remarks about what Sir said about his post-retirement career and his years in service, I would just like to say, sir, that what you had achieved in your career, while distinguished and remarkable, has followed a trajectory that was perhaps also followed by several of your contemporaries. Ribeiro Saab ho gaye, Gill Saab ho gaye, many others. But I think it is safe to say that what you have achieved post-retirement can be matched by no other police officer in this country. I mean, I think that's the distinction I wanted to draw. And I think, therefore, perhaps, it's not a reflection of your years in service, but something which is truly unique, and it's something that has inspired all of us. In terms of your seniority, sir, you're not just a Bhishma Pitama, but you're also a Dronacharya for many Eklavyas across the country. I mean, I never had the privilege of, I joined service 2 years after your retirement in 1996. But while I was training in the National Police Academy, two of my very distinguished trainers, one of them went on to become DG BSF like yourself, Mr. Subhash Joshi, and the other who retired as DG Uttarakhand Police, Mr. Anil Rathodi, would always talk about your contribution in the UP Police and elsewhere. And I would like to, amongst those contributions, I would like to say that the CI operations that took place under your leadership in the Tarai region of Uttarakhand, what is now Uttarakhand, erstwhile Uttar Pradesh, as a response to the Khalistan movement, a branch of the Khalistan movement that had come to Uttar Pradesh, I think it's a masterclass in how a police force was geared up, prepared, operationalized on the ground, and they wiped out the insurgency, I think, within a period of 8 months. Is that something around? And I think the tactics that UP police followed, and mind you, without any fanfare, they didn't get half as much glory or brickbats as the Punjab police did for their work in Punjab. But I think, those of us who went, and even now, because it remains an area of concern, that entire belt. So, that is something I wanted to just highlight in my remarks on your service, sir. With regard to police leadership, sir has talked about extensively in his book about, having a spine, his many run-ins with the then political class. I think, I would say, sir, in all fairness, the ecosystem then and the ecosystem now has changed beyond recognition. I think both the political class and the police leadership work under a far harsher media scrutiny, public scrutiny, civil society expectations than existed in your time. It's not a defense of the very visible concerns about police performance that Shri Alok Bansal pointed out. And I think, again, as a serving police officer, it would be, we would be failing in our duties if we did not actually acknowledge the poor perception of police performance, of police credibility, which exists across the country. I don't think it's confined to any one part of the country or any one police organization. I think police organizations all across the country, and I think the Indian Police Service leadership has to take the lion's share of the responsibility for this poor perception. Now, how we correct it, I think it cannot be done by the police leadership alone, but I think we have a greater stake and a greater responsibility in convincing civil society about what is required to correct police perception as well as police performance. And I think to that extent, what Sir achieved through his PIL, it's a landmark thing that, the highest court of the land, fine, it's taken a long time, 27 years. So I think the judgment came in 2006, 10 years after the PIL was filed. And so we are looking at 19 years. And it's still, but I would, personally as a police leader, I think I would not lose heart. We've seen that time and again with various progressive measures, whether it was the Dowry Act that was enacted in 1961, whether it was the NDPS that was enacted in 1986, whether it was the human rights regulations and laws that were enacted in the mid-90s. in a society as large, as complicated, as diverse as ours, reforms, even when they are best designed and implemented by an enlightened leadership, will take time to percolate to the grassroots. I don't think so. You have shown us the roadmap, you've shown us the light through your PIL, and I think all of us who are serving today in senior positions and our colleagues who will take over the mantle decades from now, we all have a collective responsibility to ensure that the principles on which this police reforms PIL was based and which guided the Supreme Court judgment, fine, we may not always agree with the nitty-gritty of various things. I think, I can give you the example in a small state like Uttarakhand, where we just have 160 police stations. So the Chief Minister practically knows every Thanedar by name. So sometimes it becomes very, very difficult to convince him of the need for stability of tenure, because, his understanding or his interaction with the rank and file is direct, immediate. So, it becomes that much harder to convince him. So certain aspects of the police reforms, I think they will remain a work in progress. But what Sir has achieved, he has mainstreamed police reforms as a core principle of good governance in our country. And I think for that alone, police leadership and the police rank and file have a lot to be grateful to him for. Thank you, sir.
You've all heard the author as well as three discussants. Apart from author, it's been more a discussion on the author than on the book, but that was expected considering the iconic personality of Mr. Prakash Singh. The house is now open for question, comments, etc. We'll take about 2-3 at a time.
Yeah. We're speaking about perception of corruption in the police. My father was the only magistrate in the whole of New Delhi in the 50s. And a year and a half before that, a magistrate was removed for corrupt practices. A year and a half after he left, after 10 years of service, same thing happened to the next magistrate. Of course, there was corruption then also, but there must have been a lot of difference. But my question is pertaining to the judicial delays. You think unless the judicial delays are brought down, you think any perception of police efficiency or police honesty will become a reality? And number two, since you've served in border areas, is the police protected with proper protective equipment like bulletproof vests and all? Because so many deaths take place because they get shot. Thank you.
Sir, my name is Sivesh, and my question to you is, while you were addressing, you took the word loyalty a lot. So what does that mean in the service? Why there is a lot of fear related to that loyalty with the preceding officers or in the transfers? And
Hello. I think when it comes to the perception of police, there is this politicians. I mean politicians. Why I'm saying that perceptions comes from a general understanding of how power behaves. And when we see as a people, we see that how elections and then corruption through that politicians come to power, that how money works and all that. And when we find that how the police officers working under certain, like whoever in that political leadership, when the perception goes through them, that yes, how politics change and how police officers change, so that remains a key thing in their mind. So my point is, if judiciary and the constitution, if that remains the guiding light there, and only the police department is responsible for that, so I think the perception can change. Your comment on that. Thank you.
Talk about, again, police perception. See, like I said in my remarks earlier, I think it is a very real problem. The negative public perception of the police, and there are measurable and visible concerns about police performance. We can talk about judicial delays, but the delays in investigation, the delays in redressal of public grievances, recently the Pahalgam incident, again, it's a lapse on our part, first and foremost, with the security forces who are manning that particular area. Similarly, in various other law and order situations, we can say that, there are visible issues with police performance, with police credibility. But I think we have to also see that while we have imposed all manner of, what I would say, first world public expectations in terms of, police behavior, police performance, in terms of resources being provided, our provision of resources is still third world. So, you have expectations of first world levels of human rights enforcement, you have of police performance across various things, but you are not providing the same kind of resources. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like last year, all over the country, we implemented the new criminal laws. And to my mind, they represent a significant and a very welcome reform in several areas, such as technology, such as forensic science. They've made it mandatory. So now, all offenses over 7 years, you are required to collect forensic evidence. It's a mandatory part of investigation. Now, while that's a very laudable aim, but it requires, like I calculated, for a simple district, the kind of just the digital data that you would have to capture from a crime scene would require the establishment of data centers at each district level. It would require a provision of forensic capabilities at Thana level. Now that's a work in progress. That's not going to happen. You simply don't have enough forensic experts. You simply don't have enough in-house expertise within the police departments to run data centers. So all that is going to take time. Similarly, with regard to post Nirbhaya, there's a very justifiable public outcry with regard to crimes against women. Now, I mean, study after study has pointed out that the best way to tackle this serious issue is, first of all, to increase the number of women in the police force. Now, across the country, I think that average languishes well below 15%. So we can pass all the draconian laws with regard to crimes against women. You see, we passed a law, I think, in 2013. We made mandatory death sentence. How many death sentences have actually been carried out? So the gap between legislative intent, public expectations, and actual police capability, it's extremely wide. And that needs to be addressed through greater provision of resources. There's no other solution.
I fully agree with Abhinav on this. I come from a state where there are more forensic resources than in other states. But even in our state, I find that, even in Karnataka, I find that there's certainly a shortfall as far as resources go, though as compared to other states, Karnataka, Telangana, and to some extent Tamil Nadu, we have much better resources in terms of equipment, in terms of body cameras, in terms of digital forensics. Even so, there is a fairly big shortfall. And yes, while I mean, it is a kind of a knee-jerk thing to immediately react when people talk about the police image, while we need to improve a great deal, it is a fact that since this is the cutting edge, it is more evident to the public. While the police does not have as much scope for corruption as other services, which I would say customs or the IAS or anything else. In fact, they have very much more. But since this is the cutting edge, people look at it and then, they tend to react. However, we need to talk about image improvement, that is correct. We need to talk about women's safety, which post-Nirbhaya has not really improved. And we need to talk about giving much more resources on this. All that he has said, I endorse. And it comes back again to saying that the 3 mantras that Prakash Singh ji has brought out is more relevant than ever.
Just one point. I think police, one must understand, having sort of reported from the Thana level upwards, I think there's greater scrutiny on the police. Their resources are absolutely pathetic and limited. There are greater, the kind of per capita police availability in India is perhaps one of the lowest, correct me if I'm wrong, in the world. And like you said, but I disagree slightly on this first world thing. I think first world is worse than us. If you look at what happens, atrocities in the US or otherwise, the kind of things the police do, at least our police here, they don't do that on that level or that extent. But my submission here is that if we have to improve the police force, I think we need to give them more facilities, better working hours at the Thana level and upwards. Otherwise, we'll continue to debate whether the police is corrupt, not corrupt, whether effective, not effective. Given the kind of country that we live in, the number of people, the population that we have, I think it's going to be a perennial challenge going forward. I think that's something that we have to understand. And only those of us who have actually interacted with the police at the lowest level and then seen how they perform under pressure will understand the pressures they go through.
Just a few reactions on what has been said just now. There has been several references to perception about police performance. In this context, I would like to bring to your notice that during COVID, public perception about the police changed drastically. And there was an agency, Polstrat or Polstart, they said that it has jumped to 65 or 67%. And BBC, which is generally critical of anything Indian, even they admitted that police performance during COVID was extraordinary. The Prime Minister said that the police behaved with a lot of compassion and empathy. Hindu, in a lead article, said that police were the front line of the front line. That is how they describe police performance. How the police perception went up during COVID, because while most of the departments went into a cocoon, non-performing, the judiciary was hardly performing. There were only two departments which were functioning around the clock despite COVID. One was medical, which had to. There's no getting away from that. But police was also functioning around the clock. And what is more important, we went beyond our charter of duties. Not only that, we were recording FIRs and responding to any distress calls, we did a whole lot of other things, like arranging supply of essential commodities to any group of people, arranging oxygen cylinders, transporting somebody to hospital, and if nothing else, singing and dancing to entertain people who were locked inside their houses. So police performance during COVID was extraordinary. It was admired and appreciated and recognized by everyone. And Common Cause's report published by Common Cause in the status of policing, it has beautifully painted, beautifully described police role during COVID, and they said that they all acknowledge that police performance during COVID was extraordinary. Now, why I'm mentioning this? Because there were no superior orders for the police to go beyond their charter. And yet, of their own will, they came out. Now, it restored my faith, belief, and confidence in the police that police is not all cruel, all brutish, or corrupt. I mean, given the opportunity, and they can rise to an occasion without any superior orders. And they came very close to the people, and the people benefited by their interventions, which were beyond their mandate as laid down in the law. So police perception during COVID was something extraordinary, and it sort of reinforced my faith in the police, that people who say that if you give them autonomy in functioning, I'm only talking of operational autonomy, nothing more than that. I believe that once you give them operational autonomy, for maybe 1 or 2 years there will be some imbalance, because we have accumulated so much of garbage and there's such a bad legacy. But soon after, I think police would regain its balance and deliver services in a manner which would meet, to a very large extent, the expectations of the people. About Tarai, something more I want to add to what Abhinav said, because not many people know that Terai terrorism was very serious, and Terai area, it included 10 districts of UP, and geographically it was as big as Punjab. And in terms of ferocity of terrorism, well, if Punjab was on a scale of 10, 9.5, I will say Terai was 4.5. It was very serious problem. And when I went to UP, I mean, the refrain of officers was, sir, हम ये बलवा कम्युनल राइट्स डील कर लेते हैं, चोरी डकैती सब कुछ चीज़ हम डील कर लेते हैं, पर ये आतंकवाद का क्या करें? Because there was no background of terrorism. But I had gone with background in Assam, with Punjab. 4 years I had served in Punjab. So I said, look, I know how to deal with this, and we prepared a blueprint which I must say UP police rose to the occasion. I was so thrilled when I would see UP police officers going in civvies, fully armed, in a group in dense jungles. I said, now they are going to win the battle for me. And they won the battle. They won the battle, and the beauty of operations in Terai, and this is also yet to be recognized. I hope Abhinav brings this out, because he has taken up writing a book on Terai terrorism. I have given him whatever material I have. One of the most beautiful aspect, the most laudable aspect of police operations in Terai, or his CIA operations, was that there was no legacy of bitterness. There were no human rights cases. Once the terrorism was defeated, it was defeated, and that was the end of it, and people were happy, and there were no complaints against police of extortion, of house grabbing, or cold-blooded killing, nothing like that. No cases like that came up. So that was something absolutely remarkable in dealing with terrorism in the Terai area. Somebody talked about loyalty. I don't know in what context I said loyalty, but loyalty, when I talk of loyalty, well, it means loyalty more to the constitution and to the laws of the land and to the, to the rule of law, and not so much to an officer. Yes, you have to be loyal to an officer, but if the officer gives you a wrong order, you should be able to say, sorry sir, this cannot be done. And if he insists on that being done, well, you ask him to give it in writing. I'm sure that is the stage where he will back out. Because these wrong orders always backfire in the long run. Inquiries may be held 10 years later, 20 years later, and you find that something which you have done wrong as a superintendent of police, after retirement it chases you. So nobody will give it to you in writing. And if he gives it in writing, then the onus would be on him. So it's loyalty to the country, to the people of the country, to the constitution of the country, to the laws of the land. That is more important than loyalty to the person sitting in as your boss. Yes, you have to be loyal to him, you have to be courteous to him, you have to be polite to him, but if he transgresses a certain limit, you should be able to say no. That is what I mean by loyalty. चलिए ठीक है आगे और सवाल
Firstly, Shri Prakash Singh ji, congratulations to you for coming out with this book. You have had a very illustrious career as the police officer, and I'm sure you could have written much more, but as it is said, people who handle such very sensitive responsibilities carry many things to grave. Many things cannot be written, so probably you could have written much more, but you must have written very important and many useful things for all of us to read. I haven't read the book. But I have an observation, and maybe it's a question on which you can comment upon. You are very well known for your crusade for the police reforms, and you succeeded in extracting a big judgment in 2006. But 20 years down the line, not a single state has implemented the Model Police Act fully. Now, is it the states are to be blamed for it, that they are insincere? Or maybe something as I'm a political worker, so as a political worker I look at it, that to the extent that you talk about tenure, fixed tenure, fully appreciated. But if we say that selection also should not be in the hands of the politicians or the political leadership, and the judgment interestingly says that it should not be in the hands of the political establishment, it should be in the hands of the public. No, the public is what the government is. I somehow feel that not many police are complaining that Police Model Act is not implemented. Not many are complaining. And very interestingly, politician, maybe there are bad politicians, there are good politicians also. There are good police, but there are bad police also. Now, police needs to be free from political interference, but what about civil bureaucracy? Should they also be free from political interference? They should also be. Now, last point that I wanted to draw your attention to and seek your comment was, through this process, we created a situation where politician cannot decide, the chief minister cannot decide, a body in Delhi will decide. That body is full of bureaucrats. You can ask Mr. Abhinav. I mean, in our system, a DGP can become a DGP. Because we have not allowed chief minister to decide, we allowed bureaucrats sitting in UPSC to decide. I have no malice against anybody. But is there something fundamentally a little flawed in that whole concept of that Model Police Act that we are not able to implement it in any state?
So I just wanted to make 2 points. One is, I think what Abhinav was saying, for the amount that the Indian state has been willing to invest in its police forces, the police forces have done phenomenally well. And I just want to say it by 2-3 metrics. One is we just rattled off, apart from Mr. Prakash Singh, the leadership icons in the police. The mantras that Mr. Prakash Singh has laid out is exactly what Sam Manekshaw said. So the icons in the police have been the ones as similar as in the military. In institutional terms, if India looks at its national security achievements, I think internal security has been one of our phenomenal successes. I was associated when LWE started, and the hubris of the army was that if you give it to the police, Central India is gone. They've turned it around. So I think, and whenever I have seen this personally, say a BSF battalion with you in the brigade or a divisional sector, they have done phenomenally well. So I just don't know how this whole stuff comes from low rating. Look at the advantage that the army has. We have entire security of tenures, from divisional commanders to CDS. Not a tenure is interrupted. With all this and with the low investments in police, I think our internal security has been a phenomenal success. Certainly more than the military, because today's situation we should have had combat overmatch with Pakistan, which we don't. The lag with China is growing. Even in the external affairs thing, unsettled borders. So we must seriously look at this. I don't know. I know you didn't mean it, but when you said low rating or what, I don't know where this comes from. And the last point I'd like to make is what Mr. Ram Madhav made. When the chief minister wants to appoint his DGP, it is a vote of confidence in the police force. And I don't know where everybody else in the executive branch or every other service is appointed by the executive. So this whole thing about Supreme Court appointed, somebody monitored, has become a very strange conundrum. The chief minister wanting to appoint a DGP is, I think, a vote of confidence in the police forces. So I just wanted to say this.
So my question is for any of the IPF, in fact, for all the IPS officers, what are the top 2-3 mantras you have to manage? I mean, I'm not sure how to put it. I was thinking which words I should use. Political conflict between like loyalty and the political dictum. The political narrative, and the conflict. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've faced conflict through your career as to loyalty, law of the land, your loyalty to the state, and the political dictum, the political conflict per se. I don't have the right words. These are the best words I could choose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. My name is Rakesh Kumar Singh. My question is, sir, we have also seen this problem of the suicides of some of the meritorious IPS officers and resignation of some of the meritorious IPS. So as a recommendation, my question is like, there was a question also being asked about that PIL, that is any specific type of psychological training is being required, like army to have during the training academy, so that this type of problems which are being faced can minimize. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. I join this audience in congratulating you, sir, for a great job done and a great career. I join all the other panelists in congratulating you. And I am of the opinion that resources which are being talked about, I still remember, I have been following from the days of Dharamveer committee in which he said the police was in a bad shape, to this day when tremendous amount of improvement has taken place. Therefore, things should qualitatively improve, that is one. And I have a very small, naive question. When will we be able to, follow the traffic rules? When I am driving on the road, after 75 years of independence, nobody seems to be following the traffic rules. And I don't think it is so difficult to implement. And we are all playing with our lives when we are driving, that we don't know when the death will meet us. So kindly enlighten us as to how we can improve this situation. Thank you very much, sir. God bless you, sir.
Responding to Mr. Ramadhav's question first, he talked about the police reforms and he said that 20 years down the line we are still nowhere and none of the states are implementing it. Let me tell you that willy-nilly the states are moving in the direction of police reforms. Unfortunately, it is not reflected at the ground level very sharply yet. But if you examine the affidavits which they keep on submitting before the Supreme Court, on the question of if you very briefly, say State Security Commission, they have been set up. It's another matter that they violate the letter and the spirit of the Supreme Court's directions. Then Police Establishment Board, these have also been set up in the majority of states, but whether they are functioning or not functioning, that is the question. Complaints authorities, again, there's half-hearted compliance. Some states have, some states have not. Then about the appointment of DGP, which you made a special mention. You see, the Chief Minister's prerogative to appoint a Chief Minister has been retained by the Supreme Court. What they have done is restricted the area of discretion. You see, hitherto what was happening, that the Chief Ministers were going berserk in the selection of the DGP. They will select just anyone based on cost consideration, based on personal loyalty to him, based on some regional consideration, and not on considerations of merit. Therefore, the Supreme Court said that we cannot deprive the Chief Minister of his prerogative to select the DGP, but we will restrict his range of choice. The UPSC will prepare a panel of 3 officers who are considered eligible for promotion and who by service record are considered good. So A, B, C, 3 names are placed before the Chief Minister. Say one is 70%, one is 80%, and one is 90%. Even the calculation was that even if he selects the 70%, he would still deliver. The problem was when he was going to 40% or 30%, that was the problem, which Supreme Court wanted to eliminate. So the Chief Minister even today has the prerogative to appoint the DGP of the state, only that he is given 3 names. Out of these 3, you please select one, and not that you select at random just from anywhere. Anyway, I think the case is listed tomorrow, and I'm preparing for tomorrow's appearance also. And without going into the details, not to be shared with the media, but without going into the details on this question, I have suggested some modification which would probably improve matters. What that modification is, I don't want to go into the details of it, because we know that there is a lot of heartburn among the Chief Ministers about the procedure which has been laid down by the Supreme Court. But otherwise, there's none of the states have said that we don't agree with the State Security Commission, we don't agree with the Establishment Board, we don't agree with complaint authorities, we don't agree with 2-year tenure, we don't agree with separation of crime work with law and order. That is one point where there is no disagreement at all, and where the states are gradually implementing it. So there is partial implementation, there is half-hearted implementation, there is you can say very clever implementation, but things are moving forward very slowly, very gradually in the direction, because the Supreme Court has maintained its pressure. That was about that. And then about internal security, General Shukla raised some point. And if I am not mistaken, he said our record has been very good in maintenance of internal security. And despite the constraints under which we function and the constraints of enormous shortages of manpower, shortages of forensic laboratories, shortage of communication, transport, all that is there, and yet we deliver. And I think that is something remarkable. And the greatest, if I were to sum up the greatest achievement of Indian police since independence, I would say defeating terrorism in Punjab was number one. I mean, terrorism is, you will very seldom come across such a lethal manifestation of terrorism when it is backed by the entire might and resources of Pakistan, being defeated essentially by the Punjab police, yes, supported by CRPF, supported by BSF, supported by the Indian Army. But Punjab police was in the lead. And but for the kind of leadership which Mr. Rivera provided and Mr. Gill provided, they would not have been able to defeat. But that is not to underestimate the contribution of the Border Security Force. Just to give you one example, but for the manner in which the BSF secured the border, and securing the border meant cutting off the supply of oxygen, as the experts say, from Pakistan. Once the supply of oxygen was cut off, it was a question of time that the fire of terrorism would get extinguished. Hitherto, what was happening was that if Punjab police liquidated 10, they were replaced by another 10 from Pakistan. But now if they were replaced by, the 10 would be replaced by 2 or 3. So the numbers started going down. So, I mean, these paramilitary forces, the BSF and other forces, they also made tremendous contribution, and securing a border was one of those things which has somehow not been appreciated adequately. I mean, I remember having a discussion with Mr. B. Raman, one of the finest intelligence officers we had, when I said that but for this contribution, terrorism in Punjab would have continued for another 10 years. He agreed with me. So that was that about internal security. About loyalty, I have already said, and I have nothing more to say. And I think there was a brief mention of Dharamveera Commission and National Police Commission report. I mean, whatever I have moved in the petition and whatever is being discussed by way of police reforms is essentially a summing up and the core recommendations of the National Police Commission only.
Ramadhav sir had said about the political class having a stake. I think we must appreciate that policing in a democracy like ours is going to remain an activity of intense concern to the political executive, because their entire career, their entire future depends on perception of good governance and good policing. I mean, we see that state after state, while good policing per se may not be sufficient to win a political mandate, perception of bad policing or bad law and order is certainly very, very detrimental to the political prospects of a elected executive. So I feel as a serving officer, we have a great stake in selling police priorities as a political imperative to the political executive. I think it's part of our responsibility as police leadership that we must, whatever our priorities are in terms of greater resources, in terms of greater manpower, whatever legal regulatory changes in various laws or rules and regulations, we must be confident enough, and that requires, I think it requires a better, a more data-driven, more evidence-driven presentation of policy options towards the police leadership. Because quite often we find, be in the police, and not just in the police, across the bureaucracy, even I would say in the military leadership, act more on gut instinct and our own perception rather than, hard data-driven and evidence-driven policies. And so I think that needs to change.
Thank you. I think we've had a fascinating discussion on a fascinating book by an iconic figure. I think at the end, it's left for me to thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for taking time out from your busy schedules to be here. And of course, to the discussants who have actually, some of whom have actually come from outstations to be here with us. That shows the reverence in which the author is generally held. With that, we'll wind up the session. And again, to remind you, we do this program every month. We have one book discussion and one general discussion. We are having a next discussion on 26th on from look east to act east, what has changed. So I request all of you to kindly be here at the same time. Thank you very much.